And welcome back to a fresh episode of the Business Growth Show. I'm your host, Sam Dunning, co-owner over at webchoiceuk.com. And today I'm joined by Joe Burt. Joe is the owner over at WorldSpark Design, and he's part of Bristol Books. It's a not-for-profit publishing company offering high-quality publishing services and businesses and organizations in and around the Bristol area. Joe, a warm welcome to the show, sir. How's it going?
Hello, Sam. Hello. Good to see you, and thanks for getting me on the show.
No worries, man. So looking forward to this one today. This is going to be a bit of a unique episode for us. So the focus today is all about why hard work pays off. And we're going to be learning your story, Joe, probably for the next 30 minutes or so, talking about how you've kind of worked your way up, the trials and tribulations, overcoming tough times, and then sharing some tips on kind of how you've built up your own sustainable business. So without much more rambling from my side, let's crack on with kind of learning a bit more about you, Joe, and kind of a bit more about your story, really. If you could kind of roll with it, sir.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Yeah. So I think I just wanted to sort of tell a bit about my story, really, to people today, really. And it's not totally unique, but for me, it's defined, the route that I've taken to the workplace and in my career is defined things for me and led to success, really. So sort of starting out from right at the beginning, let's say, really, when I was my first employment, in fact, was doing a paper round, and I literally every single day of the week. I started off with a Saturday and Sunday paper round, and then literally sort of ramped it up to doing a paper round every day of the week. And on top of that, I was also doing a job sticking up skittles in the evenings. Sort of most weeks I'd do, one night, sometimes two nights, and that was, I didn't. I guess it was my way of sort of making my way in life, and being self-sufficient. I didn't get sort of the handouts from my family in terms of like lavish pocket money, Christmas presents, things like that. So I was much more, I really got a buzz out of just earning the money myself, and that feeling that it gave you, really. So that's kind of where it started, really, from a young age. So that's school age. You're talking about sort of 14-year-old. And yeah, that I can definitely trace things back, my sort of business ethic, really, to that point. But so from there, did a bit of studying, did a higher national diploma in design and media, and then was finding it a bit tricky. I kind of moved up to Bristol, and I thought, right, I really want to get a job in design, and
Yeah.
it was quite tough. I guess I was educated, and I thought, right, I'll just stroll into the workplace, but it didn't quite happen like that. I sent off a load of CVs, didn't get any response, and just felt a little bit kind of beaten back by it all, really. At the time, I was working just as a sales assistant in a camping shop, and that was what I was doing to make ends meet. I kind of moved up to Bristol, and I needed to pay the bills, needed to pay the rent, and so I was doing that, just working as a sales assistant every day of the week, apart from weekends. And then I managed to get a foot in the door with a publishing company, doing graphic design for them.
Okay.
Now, what I did was a bit unconventional in the sense of I didn't actually get paid for the work that I did. I sort of met the people who were looking to, who needed help at that time,
Yeah.
and they sort of, they said, "Oh, great, good to meet you, and hopefully we can get some work for you." And a few months after, I thought, I really want to get some work. I really want to, just really feel like I want to break through, start my career. And I was fortunate enough just to strike upon a brainwave of working for free for them. So I just phoned them up, said, look, I really want to work for you guys. Can I just do this for free? And it really paid off. I got my foot in the door there, and well, it worked. It sort of built up from there. I basically started to be on their books as a self-employed freelancer, and then you know that was probably about 4 or 5 years after that. I actually became a director of a company.
Got it.
There was
So
me,
let's
me and two
before we get
others.
into where you are now, Joe, let's look back a bit. So I mean, the whole premise of today's episode is kind of looking at hard work and how that's going to help you in business, and then we'll kind of share some of your tips as you've grown your company over the years. So you mentioned from a young age you were kind of doing a paper round. You did sticking up for Skittles, and you're pretty much working almost 7 days a week in your spare time. It sounds like from your
Yeah.
early teens. So is that something? I mean, relating this back to business, is that kind of mindset of because I guess there's two angles to this. Some people have got the kind of argument of work hard and work smart. I'm under the angle of, at the same time, if you don't do smart work and you don't kind of push yourself to make things happen, then nothing's going to happen for you. Um, so do you think that's something that's kind of ingrained in people from an early age, Joe, or is it more the sense that you've got to go out and get it, or what's your view on that side of things?
Well, I think it's to do with your circumstances. So I think I had a hunger from a young age that I
Mm,
wanted to, I wanted to have, say, even if it was like a new bike or something like that, that I may not have been able to have, just through pocket money or Christmas presents or whatever. So I had that hunger to want to earn that money. And I think that's to do with your circumstances as much as anything else. It's not necessarily to do with your age. I mean, who knows? Maybe it is like an inherent thing, but I think for me, it was about at that point in time, that's really what I wanted, and that was my drive.
yeah, yeah. The hunger for it. I mean, and I guess that can relate to kind of business now as well, in terms of setting yourself targets and knowing where you want to get to, and kind of putting your mind to it.
Massively, massively. I think people you're not going to get anywhere if you sit back expecting things to come your way. I think you have to be the driving force. If you want to get something, you have to be the driving force. And it's not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily just about hard work in the sense of like how many hours you put in. I think when you're younger and you don't really have necessarily, opportunities in the same way now as a business person, but when you're younger and starting out, it's how can you earn more money? Well, you put in more hours. There weren't quite as many opportunities back then. This is talking about pre-internet here. So, but yeah, so it's not necessarily about hours, but it's just about hard work.
Yeah. All right. So moving forward a bit, you mentioned you were kind of keen to get into this publishing company. You spoke to them, and they said they'd give you a shout when some work came up. So you took the initiative of, did you say, doing some free work, and what
Yeah,
happened next?
yeah. So did some free work for them, and I just think the guys who employed me at the time really just saw that I was keen, and if you're keen, it gets you a long way. Again, if people see that you want to be there, you want to be doing what you're doing, then they respond to that. So I think that just, yeah, that did the trick really, and yeah, I think so. So from there, basically, things progressed, more hours. I could give more and more to the business, and they could see that, and in the end, that led to a directorship in the company.
Yeah, yeah. Any lessons learned in terms of kind of those years? What was the time frame, Joe, in terms of when you first started to working yourself up to director level? And is there anything that you kind of share with us that you kind of learned on the way in terms of a business front as that went
Yeah,
on?
certainly. I think so. So this was the company that I used to work at, Farragut Jones, it was called, a publishing company.
Yeah,
Um, it was it was a smallish company, probably about 5, 6 employees on average. Sometimes a few more of that, but it was what we were quite dynamic as a business, quite able to sort of move with the times in terms of what we were doing and what we could offer compared to some of the bigger publishing companies at the time. But what the biggest sort of lesson I really got from that whole experience. I was employed as a director for about 4 years at the end of working for the company. So maybe about 8 years in total employment. And this, I think it was around 2012 that the company actually went into administration. And that was the best, in a way. I didn't think it at the time, but it was actually probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because I learned so much from that experience. We got ourselves into trouble because we took on a job for a client who built up a very big debt with us.
Right.
And unfortunately, that despite their promises, they never came good on their debt. And it was a real, I mean, at the time it was really sad, because working for a company, you build real friendships with the people you're working for and from, and yeah, it's always sad when that kind of comes to an end, really. But as I say, I did learn a lot from that, because it just taught me that you always need to sort of trust the figures and trust, don't fall for sort of empty promises, really.
I think we've all been there, right? Perhaps not to that extent, but we've certainly. I know us at WebChoice in the past, we've had customers that have perhaps promised us kind of epic large scale projects, and we thought, oh, this is a juicy client, and they kind of say, yep, let's start this. We'll pay a bit later, like we're sorting out our accounts, or we pay 60-day invoices, or whatever it may have been. But then as time goes on, you're kind of delivering on your end, and you're wondering how the payment's going to come in. And I suppose sometimes it's easy to fall for those, especially when perhaps you've got a customer that's been good in the past, or they've come recommended, or things like that.
Yeah, and it's easy to be sort of lured in by good promises, isn't it? So I think that's the lesson from that, really.
Yeah. So what would you say was kind of a key learning from that, Joe? Is it more to kind of go for kind of smaller customers that are willing to pay on time, or is it just making sure customers pay up front, or is it?
Yeah, I think you certainly need to follow. It's all of those things, really. It's following the basics. I think you just need to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to risk, because that risk, it's people's employment, it's people's livelihoods. It's not worth it. No matter how good the potential reward is there, don't throw away the sort of basics of business and be lured into it, really.
Yeah.
And I must admit, the other thing as well is that I was a bit inexperienced as a director, and I put my hand up to that as well. I didn't probably appreciate the full risk that we were taking on as a business, and so since then I've not ever underestimated that.
Yeah. I've been in a similar situation, actually, when I don't think it was quite to the extent of your company, but before I was at WebChoice, I was working at a marketing company, and basically the owner wanted to grow much faster than we physically could. And at the time, because I wasn't really a founder, I wasn't a director of the business, I was just one of the main sales guys, I just kind of went along with it. And he had all these kind of lavish plans to buy an office that we didn't really need, employ four sales staff before we could really afford it. And essentially all the cash flow was on the line. So when the sales guys didn't deliver 2 or so months in, the company, of course, crashed because it had limited funds, being a startup. I missed out on about 7-8 grand in wages and sales commissions, which was a massive hit at the time, but it was also a blessing in disguise. I mean, there was a lot of learnings to take away. It kind of gave me a bit of a wake-up call in terms of relying on things, and now running a company at WebChoice, like you say, you just keep your eye on figures and things that you wouldn't necessarily do as an employee so much more, because you've got to manage all your outgoings. You've got to understand when customer payments are coming in. You've got to understand what you're paying your staff, what you're paying other things, your accounts. So there's a lot of things to keep your finger on the pulse on, right?
That's right. That's right. Completely.
So yeah, it's sometimes those shocks are a good learning curve because they kind of wake you up to reality and what you've got
Yeah,
to.
I think that's it. I'm amazed in a way if anybody who is new to business and is new to being a director of a company, I'd be amazed if anybody wasn't taken aback by some things like that. It's just natural. Sometimes you just have to learn the hard way, really.
Yeah, no, that's it. So moving forward, let's learn a bit more about kind of Wild Spark and also your book company. Tell us a bit more about kind of the starting of those companies and how you managed to build those up, and any kind of tips you can share with us on that front, Joe.
Yeah, so I think after that experience, in a way, I was quite conscious to try and build something that was sustainable and that was low risk right from the beginning. And so I was lucky enough to start Wild Spark Design, which I started as a sole trader, and it was very much just building on the relationships that I'd had with some of my previous clients from the publishing company I worked at before,
Okay.
and I'd I'd built some great connections there, and amazingly to this day, you're talking about sort of some of the relationships there that go back 20 years almost. So I've really I'm really grateful about really. So I basically I took those, they were the sort of foundations of my business really, as Wild
Yep.
Spark Design, those relationships. And then at the same time, there were people who were looking for a couple of people who I was working with at the time as well, who were looking to start a new publishing company. And actually, my skills sort of very much aligned with their skills as well. Um, and we kind of started it really as almost like a hobby. Um, but I've surprised myself really with how it's gone since then. I think it's kind of strange. In a way, we didn't really have very big ambitions for it, but it's just, yeah, it has grown more than we would have expected. But those are the two key things really that came out of my situation, was that I was able to start these two companies which sort of coexist still today, and are have been doing very well for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I mean, in terms of talking about your main business, World Spark Design, would you say that the crux of building that up is kind of relying on connections that you've made and kind of building off relationships with existing customers? Was there any kind of new
Yeah,
business acquisition, or was it mainly kind of nurturing those relationships you already had?
I must admit, it's always been about nurturing good relationships that I've had, and
Yeah,
I think you know I've been in a position before where I thought I could grow, I could expand this, but I've been happy to kind of keep it at the level that I've kept it at, um, for a number of reasons. I think partly it's to do with starting a family and having commitments outside of work, because I think that can kind of take a lot out of you as well, and that's
sure.
something that I wanted to sort of focus on. So I think that was part of it, and also just feeling like you know I kind of can take my foot off the gas and still be successful and get what I want from work without it sort of completely dominating me and taking too much out of me. So I think I would say that kind of whereas I was earlier on in my career, I was kind of frantically kind of filling in the hours and working as hard as I can. I think
Yeah,
I have turned that round more in more recent years to just think, well, actually, who's in charge here, and what do I want to get out of work, and yeah, I mean, I still am motivated by money. I'm not gonna lie. I really love it when if there's a new commission or a new pitch that we win for new business, I really get a buzz out of that. So that is still really important, but it's not just all about that for me now.
Yeah, yeah. No, that certainly resonates with me, especially when you've got a family. So you've got to kind of think about balancing your time and what your priorities are, and running a
Yeah,
business
yeah.
is because you can
You're
get
not the
sucked
boss
into running a
anymore.
business, can't you? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's too true, too true. So, so like you said, Joe, a lot of your business has been nurturing existing relationships. Have you got any advice for people tuning in terms of kind of keeping clients happy, making sure they're staying with you for the long term, and kind of working those relationships and making sure, I guess, you deliver for them?
Yeah. I think it's I've not really I'm a bit more old school in the sense that I'd happily meet up with a client and sit with them and talk about stuff. I'd happily pick up the phone to them and just just make sure that they're happy. And it's listening is a real great skill as well. Like just listen to your client and see what they want. And they don't sometimes they don't want you to say things. It's not necessarily always telling them what they want to hear. I've got an instance at the moment actually where on a project where I'm um, trying to say to the client, look, actually, I think where you're going with this is not the right way, and here's a different way of doing things.
Yeah,
um, because I think in the long term, people will trust you. It's about building trust. I think it's the integrity of those relationships that I think pays off. These long-term relationships are really built on that kind of openness and integrity. And I always try and tell people things straight. I don't sugarcoat things for people.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think to your point, like always agreeing with customers is a bit of a bit of a bad move, and kind of giving your 2 cents, because I guess not everyone's going to agree with you. Some customers it may annoy, but at the end of the day, they might not be the best kind of suited for you. But if you're giving them what you feel is genuine and helpful advice that you think is going to help them in the long run, then it's better for you. It's better for them. Just makes sense, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's it's very easy just to say yes, yes, yes to customers, but sometimes it's not actually good for them. And so I've had this a number of times where people come back and they sort of they realize only after sort of learning themselves that you were right on something. And actually, I was glad that I stuck to my guns on something at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, yeah. Moving forward, I mean, there are any other points in terms of for people that are perhaps tuning in, thinking, yeah, I kind of want to kind of steadily grow my business, or people that have perhaps recently started their own company. Any other insights that you could share, Joe, that are perhaps quite useful, whether it is kind of when you first start, like these should be your main priorities, and as you grow further, these are the things that you should really consider.
Well, I think a couple of things spring to mind for me. Is one is think about business in terms of like building friendships. And if you can, a lot of my customers are people who I enjoy spending time with and like as people. And so I think if you can see business in that way as a way to um, it's not just about sort of extracting money out of people. It's a sort of two-way relationship of respect, really. So I think that's one thing about these long-term relationships, really. And the other thing, from my experience, having sort of started a couple of companies from the ashes of another company, really, was that you don't always need money. Um, I think so. There were four of us that started Bristol Books publishing company, and
Yeah,
we probably put in about £500 each to get the company up and running. And that was it, really. what was good about that is that we didn't have sort of expensive overheads as a company. I think
Yep.
sometimes it's easy to sort of like, just spend money and think that that's a way of solving a problem. But actually, what we learned is that things might not actually happen in the first place if you think that it's going to cost 10,000 to set this up and run this every year, or it might not happen. You might not be able to even get the thing off the ground if you look at it like that. So you've got to think a bit longer term sometimes on that, and it's good, always think of ways. Money's not a thing to be able to prohibit you from doing something like this, from setting up a company or even expanding a company. You don't always need money.
What would you say is more important, Joe?
What, money or?
As in, it sounds like you're alluding to kind of taking action is more important and making things happen, rather than kind of, like you say, dithering or thinking about it because you think, like, for example, to start this new business, I need 10 grand set aside because this is my business plan, and to achieve it, I need, I don't know, 10K, rather than just saying, look, this is what I've got right now. I've got these partners that are willing to go in with me. Let's see if let's do something now, make it happen. If it works, great.
Exactly.
If not, this is our other plan.
Exactly. I think it's great having plans. I'm not going to sort of rubbish plans altogether. But I think if you looked at everything from a planning perspective, nothing would ever happen.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you've got to take the plunge, and if you want to make things happen, things will happen. And that's right from the word go for me. That's always been how I've wanted to approach things, is that things are not going to happen if you just, expecting things to come your way. I often think how people, when they're looking for a new job or what to do in life, they're looking for a job description. I just think you need to write your own one, basically. I think if you want something, make it yours.
Awesome. Joe, what a great way to end. With that, we'll please do tell us more, sir, about how we can learn from you, how people can connect with you in the best way if anyone wants to get in touch.
Yeah, so my two companies, Bristol Books, bristolbooks.org and wildsparkdesign.com. I've also got the LinkedIn profile, so they're probably the best ways to get in touch, really. But yeah, I think that's it, really.
Nice one, man. Well, enjoyed the show, and if you want to learn more about Joe or get in touch with his company, we'll put all the links over on the site, businessgrowth.marketing. And with that, thanks very much for coming on the show, Joe. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks very much, Sam, and great work. Really, really appreciative of what you're doing.
No worries, dude. And if you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit subscribe wherever the heck you get your podcasts from. We interview business leaders every week to share actionable tips across marketing and sales to grow your business. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode.